First, you need a pair of scissors. Second, you need your pins and pin cushion. Third, you need a sweatshirt, and it can be Gildan, Hanes, or whichever you prefer. So now that we have all of our materials, let's get started. First, you will need to cut the band at the very bottom of your sweatshirt. Just a straight line across the bottom of your sweatshirt. This band is no longer needed once you cut it off. You can toss it. So you want to cut each sleeve off. Cut right before the seam on the left arm. Then you want to cut right after the seam on the right arm. We leave the seam because it gives the shirt a finished look. So the next step would be to iron the sleeves so you can get them really nice and pressed out before you begin to cut the strips for your ruffles. You always want to make sure you press and iron any material that you use so everything can turn out even. Now place either sleeve on top of the other so we can begin to cut your strips for your ruffles. Make sure you have a nice pair of scissors. You want to make sure you cut each strip 5 inches over. Each strip should be the same size. However, when cutting from the sleeve, it already gives it an angle and already makes it shorter as you go down the sleeve for the ruffles. You should always have about 5 ruffles after cutting all of your ruffles. This little piece, you can toss that. So because we just use sleeves to cut strips for our ruffles, you want to cut the thicker area of the sleeves to split them, because soon you will be opening up the slits to ruffle your strips. So you want to cut each of that thick piece off where the sleeve was closed at. And just the little piece, just right after where the seam was closed. Now that we have our ruffles cut up and set aside, now you can grab the base of your sweatshirt and begin to prep it so you can now add your ruffles. But first, you want to make sure you have your sweatshirt folded in half, nice and even. Remember to steam press anything that you are sewing, especially sweatshirt material, because you want to get all the wrinkles out and just make sure everything is nice and even. You can cut your sweatshirt up after or before. I choose to cut it up before. However, you want to go 2 inches from the sleeve and begin cutting. I cut 2 times over. So as you can see, the scissors is moving up twice. You want to cut twice over on the sides. It's folded in half, so you can cut the other side and the side I'm cutting now at the same time. That's why you need a good pair of scissors, because it will hurt your hand if your scissors are not good. So when you flip it over, you can begin cutting from the crew neck area down the center of the sweatshirt. I cut twice over again when I'm going down the front center of the sweatshirt. With me cutting down the center of the front of the sweatshirt, I'm also cutting the back as well because of how we have the sweatshirt folded. As I get towards the bottom, I cut 3 times, maybe 4, just to give it a little more drapage and to make it fall more. Now you are ready to become a pro. This is the moment we have all been waiting for. This is what you paid for. Let's begin our ruffles. So from our ruffles, we're going to take the longest strip, just one of them. Each sleeve provided us one ruffle for each side of the sweatshirt. Attention to detail is everything. Take strip 1 and place it at the shoulder of the shirt. Fold or pleat the fabric back twice and pin after every 2 folds until you run out of the strip. You must make sure the width of the gathers are even. For beginners, the stick pins can be very tricky, but you must figure out how to make it work for yourself. And be careful, because being poked by a pin can be a shock, but you will get used to it. Now grab your second strip and do the same technique. Fold back twice and pin. As you fold each strip, turning them into ruffles, you will notice that the length is becoming shorter towards the neck. If you see this pattern, you're doing good. Pat yourself on the back. I'm not speeding up this video because we need you to learn this technique. Once you get this down pat, you will be putting ruffles on everything in no time. Your ruffle should begin to look like this after your third strip. Because of the sleeve, it already provides the length it should be. Now that we have 2 more ruffles to go, your ruffle rip should be taking its form. Remember the technique. Fold twice, then pin. And here's just a quick tip. As you are pinning, you want to make sure to pin down, up, and make sure you don't pin the other side of the fabric. Yay, we are on the last strip to completing the first side of our ruffle sweatshirt. If your sweatshirt resembles my sweatshirt, pat yourself on the back. Now that you have aced this side of the sweatshirt, now it's time to do these steps on the other side of the sweatshirt. I know it's challenging. Trust me, you got this. Now that we have the sweatshirt flipped over, remember the sleeve provided us with 2 sets of strips for the ruffle. So now that we are repeating the steps on this side, take your longest strip, and because we have the shirt still folded, you can see where the longest strip on the other side began. You want to start there. Start at least 1 to 2 inches away from the seam. Let's repeat the same technique on this side. Because you are starting the ruffle where the longest one ended on this side, it should end right at the shoulder. For the second strip, you measure 1 fold up, then start your fold twice, then pin so it can meet at the shoulder. Remember, because of the sleeve already creating the length for us, it should automatically meet at the shoulder. If it's longer than the shoulder, then you need to go back and re-pin your ruffles. The third strip, start 2 inches from the second and repeat the steps until they get shorter and shorter in length toward the neck. You can sometimes use your finger just to measure how far back you want to fold the ruffle. Your ruffles should always be getting shorter and shorter as you work your way up to the neck area of the sweatshirt. If you want fuller ruffles, you will definitely have to get a second sweatshirt just to create more strips for more ruffles. That makes the sweatshirt fuller. Yay! You now have pinned your ruffles. Now it's time to sew them down. If your prepped process looks like mine, pat yourself on the back, girl. You did that. Do a small quality check. Just make sure all the pins are good to go. Everything's pinned correctly, because when you're sewing, you don't want to lose a pin and the ruffle fall completely apart. Grab your thread. So now we are about to sew down our ruffles. Slide the shirt onto the arm of the machine through the neck of the shirt. Next step, let your foot down and put your foot to the pedal. Go at a steady pace, and as you sew, be sure to remove each pin or sew to your comfort. Raise the foot and be sure to cut each thread from the ruffle, because you will have to do it later if you don't cut it now, which is perfectly fine. Okay, on to the next ruffle. Sew it down the same way. Always make sure your sewing foot is down. The smallest thing can make your machine stall. I recommend using the straight stitch and sew 1 inch away from where the fabric starts. Be sure to cut those threads, because once you get done with this, you'll be happy you did it as you were sewing. Because this is the first time you sewing down ruffles, you have to get very comfortable with sewing them down. So keep practicing and make sure you're removing the pins as you sew and keeping your fabric folded as you are sewing the pleats down. All right, one side down, one to go. Remember to always reverse stitch at the beginning and at the end to secure your stitches. And don't forget, cut those threads. Take your shirt and slide it in on the arm of the machine. Just like we flipped it and started at the bottom when we were doing the ruffles, you're doing the same thing with sewing them down on the other side. Now you will start at the lower end of your ruffle, all the way up to the shoulder. Make sure your pins are still in place. Let your sewing foot down and let's begin. I hope I'm going at a steady pace for you. I'm going to leave this video in slow motion. I'm not going to speed it up. If you have made it this far, pat yourself on the back. Remember to cut your threads. We are officially done with our ruffle rip sweatshirt. Girl, look at you. You did an amazing job. Now, if your ruffles are lined up like this, then you did an amazing job. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Be sure to always quality check your work for no loose pins and to make sure everything is sewed down. Today, I hope you learned how to make a ruffle rip sweatshirt. Please send me pictures of how yours turned out.